Good day, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Conversations with AARP. I am Troy Deshabert Schuster, State Director for AARP in the Virgin Islands. As we prepare to usher in the month of September, a time that marks the peak of the hurricane season, our focus turns toward disaster preparedness and resilience. Today, we are joined by Director Daryl Jaschen from the Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Agency, also known as VITEMA, who will guide us into how, as Virgin Islanders, we can navigate natural disasters and build community resilience. This episode takes on a remarkable importance as it aligns with the goals of AARP's Disaster Resilience Program and reinforces our commitment to the well being of our community, an initiative that seeks to safeguard older adults before, during, and after natural disasters by partnering with communities in mitigating the effects of extreme weather events. Through collaborative efforts and participation, we hope to create a safe, accessible, and livable community for people of all ages. Throughout the discussion, we'll explore the challenges of managing natural disasters in the Virgin Islands while learning of the strategies that Director Joshin and his team have developed to enhance our resilience as a community. And so we welcome Director Daryl Joshin. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Troy. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for being on our show again. We always look forward to having you on our program because you bring such vital, essential information to our existence, really, as a community, as we face all kinds of natural disasters, as global warming takes place, from hurricanes to earthquakes to tsunamis to even the threat of tornadoes. Not too long
Yep.
ago, they had two tornadoes in Puerto Rico, which was unheard of prior, and we also face that threat here. And we also, because of global warming, face this sargassum seaweed that has plagued our island, and we smell it all over the place, and our beaches are infiltrated with it. But first of all, tell us a little bit about VITEMA and how VITEMA interfaces with FEMA and how that works.
All right, Troy. And for again the community, VITEMA is considered a single coordinating agency. The VI code is very clear about that. We don't have cities, we don't have counties. We have Governor Bryan. He turns directly to me as a cabinet member for anything that may be emergency related. We try to solve things locally first of all. If we go beyond our capabilities, then we go through a disaster declaration process. It was very established. Working through our Office of Legal Counsel, work with our FEMA, and we're in what's called FEMA Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So there's 10 regions, but that's the one we focus in on. We have a great relationship already built with them. Most of the staff they work with by season or by event has been very seasoned from Irma and Maria. So it's the same individuals we see time and time again. But that's the process we work through. And again, Governor Bryan is the one that has to put the request in, sign for local declaration. We have to also show what we do in our environment here. And it may be a disaster that's coming on, such as a hurricane, that we can do a pre-disaster declaration. And FEMA is really focusing this year, and like you said already, the hurricane season started June 1st, but really the height of it officially is from the 15th of August, which started a day or two ago, through the 15th of October. That's when 85% of all the tropical cyclones, hurricanes are in the Atlantic come through. They may not be visiting us directly, but that's exactly what's going to happen in the Atlantic. Some may be fish storms, maybe East Coast, they may go down to the Caribbean, they may go through the Gulf of Mexico, but that's 85% will come through the next 60 days. So that's why FEMA talks to me a lot, and they will come down and actually bring a team down here ahead of time. And we're looking at probably 7 days out right now are the models. Like this morning, I looked out there. There's 3 disturbances that we're tracking right now. One actually is in the Gulf of Mexico, not an issue to us, but the other 2 have potentials to be a concern. We do have a lot of Sahara dust also in the area, which is good. And we have a high pressure system that's up by Bermuda that's keeping these formations down farther south. So if we do see that those possibilities, FEMA works with us very closely to get that emergency declaration done, and we get help and assistance that comes through, like we saw happen after Irma and after Maria. And we've been working very closely with our federal partners, with our local agencies. I have 17 initiatives that every year we exercise back in May to validate, and we continue to improve. So we can talk about those also, but really it goes back to communication, coordination, and then how do I work with VITEMA together with all the local agencies to get the information out to the community to be prepared. Easily about 3 days out, I will have very good information that a storm is going to be threatening us. Before that, it's based on modeling, but as you know, the hurricane hunters do hang out here in St. Croix quite a bit. They will go out so far and look at real accurate information. That information will provide us a really good, accurate model through the National Weather Service in Puerto Rico, and we get to word to the community as soon as we can. We talked about tropical storm watches, warnings, hurricane watches, hurricane warnings, to have you be prepared. VITEMA talks about being prepared, staying informed, and being vigilant. Those three things are the key to our success as a community in preparation for this hurricane season.
And before we take a deeper dive into hurricanes and this hurricane season, let's talk a little bit about the sargassum seaweed. We're seeing a lot of reports and complaints all over social media. We're smelling it. Even those of us who live further inland, we can smell the seaweed. And specifically on Facebook, we are seeing people complaining about the scent of the public water. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what's being done to mitigate that scent? And starting from firstly, is it safe? Is that water safe?
No, excellent questions. Seven Seas is a contractor with Water Power Authority. It does all the desalinization. I talked to Don Gregoire, who's in St. Croix here, working very closely with, he is WAPA employee, and we talk every couple of days. Yesterday we talked about this also, even a couple of weeks ago when the sargassum started to influx, is the term we use. And this is different than last year. Last year we actually had a lot of the mass, and we had a lot of intake and was preventing the actual desalinization process. This year it's already decomposed, and that decomposed is what's getting through the reverse osmosis elements, and they're having to take those elements offline for about 8 hours to clean them. And yes, there is an odor and there is a color to it. And right now they do add some additional chlorine, but you can't add too much chlorine. There's a process they're looking at also to eliminate some of that odor, some of that chlorine. To my understanding, it's not been implemented yet, but to answer your question, it is clean. It is not something that we would compromise the community with and say it's not healthy. And I know it's something different. If you live in Florida, you have water that has a sulfur smell to it also. But this is something new to us, and this is going to become seasonal. Last year we had the mass, influx that impacted the territory. Same thing on the intake to the desalinization plant, but we're watching it very, very closely. As it decomposes, it produces two things. One is called hydrogen sulfide, which is dangerous if you're in a confined area with it in large quantity, if you start piling it up. And if you're working with that and it starts decomposing, you want to have a monitor on, or you want to have a respirator mask on if you're like eliminating it as it decomposes. The other problem, it does some ammonia. So those are things, as long as it's outdoors and you're not confined with it, it is stinky, but it dries out fairly well. You don't want to necessarily pile it up in large mats and masses. We saw that last year when we worked with Water Power Authority, and we had monitors on as we started walking towards those large masses. The monitors would go off, just tell us a turn back signal. If you spend any more time in there, that would be a concern. It also impacted our Waste Management Authority as they were taking some of that sargassum out from Water Power Authority. We took it to the landfill in Anguilla, and they had to lay it out. They had to dry it and put some chemicals on top of it to keep the smell and odor down. So that's the concerns. So if it's laid out flat, it's not as big an issue. Try not to pile it up, because that's where you start seeing a higher concentration of the hydrogen sulfide and the ammonia.
My family has been in the water business for 3 generations now. My grandfather, my father, and now my brother. And one thing we have always known is that activated charcoal is an excellent um, way to remove odor from water. And has that ever been brought up here with WAPA to use activated charcoal filters to remove that odor from the water?
When we went down and walked through the Seven Seas plants last year, There's like 16 different units that are there. They have a series of filters they go through. I don't remember them actually mentioning the charcoal at all, but that may be a process that get introduced. I don't know if that's what they're looking at now as options, but when I talked to Mr. Gregoire, they are looking at options to go forward with, and I'm sure Troy, if that's one of the options, the activated charcoal, that was something to look at also. But again, we don't want the community to be harmful in introduction of anything as whether adding some additional chlorine. The catch-22 is if you add more and more chlorine, while it may be becoming more chlorinated, it actually increases the odor of the sargassum output. So that's one of the catch-22s. You have to reduce not too much chlorine in there, but you have to also be able to have enough to keep the drinking water what WAPA puts out safe. And that's the number one concern for the community, is make it safe. Yes, it may be a different color, but it's not rusty pipes. It's just, again, it's the desalinization process as it's going through, as it decomposes into really fine granulars. It gets back further and further in that mass number of filters they go through. But excellent point to bring up, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And so let's focus on hurricanes as the purpose of this show is. So we are hearing that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I believe I said that right, NOAA,
Yeah.
has increased their projections for hurricanes this season. Tell us a little bit about that and what we can expect as we approach the peak of the season. Or are we in the peak now, actually?
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is a normal process they go through. You have Colorado State University does an early one and update one. Same with NOAA, like you mentioned, they'll put up one out. They put out one on the 10th of this month, 10th of August, and it went. They went from below normal to now it's above normal, and it's a little bit has to do with sort of the impact on the El Nino effect that really is in the Pacific, but ultimately impacts here us in the Atlantic. So because of that, because of warming of the temperatures of the oceans, as we know, they did do a little update. So they went before it was the number of named storms, it was 12 to 17, and now it's gone from to 14 to 21. And we've had 5 so far in the Atlantic so far this season. And the hurricanes, as far as being named a hurricane, it went from between 5 to 9, now it's 6 to 11. And then the big guys, which is the category 3, 4, and 5, the major hurricanes, went from 1 to 4 to 2 to 5. And that's, again, anywhere in the Atlantic. It's not really saying the Caribbean. It could be into Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, like last year. Or we could get the traditional track that comes off the Cape Verde and then has a tendency to come lower in the Caribbean, or as these high pressure cells move higher up, it can come up more towards the Lesser Antilles. That's what we watch, that the dry air that we have still with that dry air mass in the Sahara. That's one of the things is keeping that moisture out, which is one of the factors that prevents the tropical cyclones from forming. But that's what they put out so far. But El Nino, initially, you weren't quite sure what's going to happen early in the season, but now they definitely see the impact coming again, 2 to 5 major storms, category 3, 4, or 5 this year.
Yeah, this global warming is almost like a double-edged sword because as a result of the global warming, we're seeing more and more of this Sahara dust, which could be rather menacing. But as we know, it does sort of help to keep the hurricanes from forming and intensifying. So I'm actually happy whenever I see all of this Sahara dust and the hills look silvery gray because I'm hopeful
Yeah.
that it will do its work, its magic, and keep the hurricanes down to a minimum.
Yeah, I can tell you, Troy, I do work in that with the Department of Health also, and they'll help put advisories out also. So we need to make sure individuals who have upper respiratory concerns that we advise them also. So while it keeps those tropical cyclone formations down, there is a negative side to it. So that's why we elderly individuals, if we see a high threat coming up, recommend staying indoors, limiting activities. Then of course we have this heat index right now on top of us also, which is another factor that comes in when you have the Sahara dust. It sort of has a dome effect on it, and it sort of causes that heat index to even be worse. That's why we're talking about the hydration. Always hydrate. If you're not used to drinking a lot of water in the mornings or evenings, definitely do it more and more and try to limit those outdoor activities so you're not doing them in the height of the heat index.
I know that VITEMA is always very well prepared for hurricane season, and you've been doing an excellent job with VITEMA. since you've been the director there. But can you tell us, do you have any special plans or preparations for this hurricane season as you've moved from year to year and gained more experience?
I would say, and I'll go back to COVID for a moment. COVID really had an opportunity for all the agencies to work together in an environment that we don't normally do. We like this, we were doing more virtual, but we had the same coordination with the federal partners as well as the local agencies. We had a lead agency with the Department of Health. The involvement from National Guard was tremendous on that. So those bonding, those groups we worked with are the same groups we would be working with after a hurricane. And again, we're in the second administration with Governor Bryan, Lieutenant Governor Roach. So we have a tremendous team that's already been going through this for years together. And I really want to, shout out to all my commissioners, executive directors, semi-autonomous agencies, the hospitals. We continue to have those exercises, and we ramp this up starting in January to May. And those exercises in May are not really the VITEMA running the show. It's really the agencies executing those key things we have to focus in, such as how do we establish the shelters for our community and who gets involved with those? How do we establish emergency power generation? How do we establish the evacuation of patients from the hospital, dialysis center coordination? Those are things we have to really focus in on. And I have lead agencies that support that. And each year we get better and better. And we identify those gaps, and we work with the chief of staff. We work with also the federal partners to minimize those gaps. One of the ones we've been working on this year, and it's taken a year, is debris removal. If you can remember from Irma Maria, we had, I believe it was 400,000 cubic yards of vegetative waste. So we know it's going to happen again potentially with another hurricane. So we have already gone forward through Waste Management Authority and DPNR, identified locations and sites to have those temporary debris removals, and then work with Governor Bryan, advising him on how we do final disposition of this debris. It's a huge challenge, but if we don't focus on it now, early on, then we're going to have also all these challenges, and we can't communicate properly to the community about tell you where you go to put all this debris that's going to clog the roads, and we have to get the part of the roads have to be opened up, the airports, the hospitals. All that is a key thing. And of course, with the Water Power Authority, we've gone from the wooden telephone poles to more and more composite poles, which also gives us more strength to the infrastructure to hopefully restore those critical telecommunications lines and power lines as fast as we can.
Excellent. And I see that you have an expo coming up for vulnerable communities. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, and we did one last year, and this is really thanks to Government House ADA Coordinator Julian Henley and Miss Eddie Utide. This is fantastic. It's called Disaster Preparedness and Disease Prevention. It's an outreach expo for our vulnerable community, and we're defining that as independent living seniors and adults with disabilities. Again, this is really Julian Henley's, and we did this for the second year this year. So the key dates and locations, I'll first give you the island, and I'll give you the date, and I'll give you the time, and there's some pre-registration you can do, or you can register the day of. So for the island of St. Thomas, it's going to be Friday, August 25th coming up. So not this Friday, the following Friday at the U.S. Virgin Islands Sports and Fitness Center. So you can register online, and there's an adaexpo.eventbrite.com. You can go to, or you can call the ADA coordinator's office at 340-715-5912 to register. And registration, pre-registration, we're requesting to have that done. The expo itself will go registration. If you don't do it online, you can do it on site from 9 to 9:30 on that day of Friday, August 25th at University of Virgin Islands Sports and Fitness Center. But it'll go from 9:30 to 2 p.m. We're going to do health screening. We'll have interactive presentations. You'll hear from Commissioner Kazi Gomez, probably, I think, Department of Health also. I will be there also. We'll talk about how to build that emergency toolkit. Mental health is a key part of this. We've all been through Irma Maria, and we still can't just ignore our mental health impact. While we are VI strong, we have to also work with each other on the mental health side of it. Programs, we'll have some giveaways also. Work on digitizing your medical information, your emergency documentation, which is so important to have. So that's, again, the first one on St. Thomas. the 25th of August. The following week will be a Tuesday, August 29th, on St. Croix at the University of the Virgin Islands Great Hall. And again, pre-registration you should do by doing the adaexpo.eventbrite.com, which is eventbrite.com. And then if you don't do it then, you can do it from 9 to 9:30 at the site at the University of the Virgin Islands Great Hall in St. Croix. And we'll also go from 9:30 to 2 p.m. Now, when I talked to the ADA coordinator's office this morning, they said for the first 100 individuals that pre-register, you can also ask for transportation. I know that's a huge thing for our seniors, individuals. But if you have your own vehicle, you can get around. Please don't just do that to do that. But if you aren't able to have transportation, you can ask when you pre-register to ask for some transportation support. We had a great turnout last year. We want to do an even better turnout this year. So again, the ADA coordinator, we have a lot of sponsors. VIA's been part of the sponsorship on this also. Department of Health, VI Police, Government House, VITEMA, a lot of agencies coming together to really doing a good outreach for our independent living seniors and our adults with disabilities.
And just now you mentioned the mental health aspect of preparing and dealing with the aftermath of storms. And I was thinking that it's not just for those who have mental health challenges, but for everybody, right? These storms are a stress. Even just looking at all of these trackers and knowing that a storm is approaching, it really impacts our emotions deeply. And even after storms, I mean, there are people who went through Hurricane Hugo back in 1989 who are still suffering with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and after Hurricane Maria. So even for those who may not, in the classic sense, have mental health issues, it still does impact us, and we need to be aware of that, about the stress that it causes for us emotionally, to be prepared to deal with it, and then to be prepared to deal with the aftermath. So I'm glad that that's being taken into consideration in all of this preparation and these expos.
No,
And
yeah, excellent point.
yeah, and so next thing is tell us more about the senior registry. This is something that AARP advocated for in getting this act through the legislature, the Virgin Islands Act number 8058, and approved by the governor. So tell us about that registry and how can people enroll in that?
Yes, I will give you all information, but I just got to tell you, Senator DeGraff is still on this. He asks me every year, where are we, and was it being updated with Department of Human Services? It's ultimately the end state for this register. Everybody, first of all, it's voluntary. Second of all, the details of registration are kept with Department of Human Services, and I'll give you the contact information for that. But copies of that are brought down. We don't need all the details, but we want to know names and locations and homes to VITEMA at 911 as well as VI Fire EMS. So one of the keys behind this, and Senator DeGraff, when he explained this to me, it makes perfect sense. So he saw after the storms, hurricanes, Irma, Maria, individuals that are homes were not being really looked at. These are seniors over age 60 that are living by themselves, or anybody with disabilities. We really want to be able to get out and see how you're doing and make sure you're okay and see what your needs are. And it's a huge, huge support effort for us. And I'll give you the numbers right now, and working with the Department of Human Services as far as how many people are registered and by island. This is really good, but we want to make it even better. So talking to Miss Yvette Henry this morning, we have 839 individuals that are registered. And this is voluntary registers. Again, you need to be age 60 or over, living by yourself, or 60 or over with a disability, okay, by yourself. So that's the key for that. So 839 individuals registered already. We've validated that. St. Croix has 271. St. Thomas has 470. And St. John has 98. So it's a very active register. Again, it's all we're doing is having information available. And if we need to make contact with you, the commissioner does have an opportunity to send out, this is Commissioner Kazi Gomez, a alert message to those individuals registered to say, hey, this is what's going on, just keep awareness. And she'll do that at least once or twice a year. But here's the numbers to call, and also give you some locations to go to and a website if you want to go to a website. So first of all, If you're on the island of St. Thomas, you can go to the Newt Hansen complex, and the number is a little bit different, change from what I gave you. It's a 340-774-0930, and the extension is now 4334. Again, for St. Thomas, 340-774-0930, extension 4334. In Cruz Bay, it's going to be 340-776-6334. In Cruz Bay, St. John, 340-776-6334. And then for St. Croix, it's a Richmond Senior Center, which is 340-773-6630. And then the magic number I will give you, this goes to Miss Henry, and this is all Monday through Friday now, so if you don't call her after 5 o'clock or call her on the weekends, is 340-715-6935. That's Miss Yvette Henry, and she's our master on this. I worked with her for years, but 340-715-6935. That's her office number in which you can register. Also, you can visit the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. There's a form to fill out there. The VI Elections offices also has that. The website at the BMV also has it. You can go to, and the Department of Human Services website. So lots of places you can go to ultimately get under. But please just choose one location to go to. You'll get in a database, and we'll be able to check on you after the storm, which is so important. Before the storm, we'll talk about that a little bit more, is that preparation. Know what you're going to do, where you're going to go. That wind-driven rain is one of the biggest things we worry about, impacting people's homes and where you are, but we want you to be safe. So once we get to a certain point with the winds coming in, I can't send 911 out anymore. I can't send responders out because I have to keep them safe. But after the event, we want to make sure we reach out to the community for those that are impacted and make sure you're taken care of. So again, the senior registry is for individuals age 60 that are over, that are living alone, or basically individuals living alone with any disabilities. So you don't have to be age 60. You can be age 25, living alone with a disability. We want to be able to reach out to you and check on how you're doing after the storm. But thank you,
now
Troy,
we're
for helping me talk about that.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. And we're approaching the end of our show, but we've given lots of information to our listening and viewing audience. But please do visit our AARP Virgin Islands Facebook page and AARP Virgin Islands and Espanol Facebook page for information. We will have these flyers with all of the details posted on our Facebook pages, so you can always reference them. And of course, you can always listen to this show again and and gain more information. So please do learn more about the dates and the times and how to register and participate. So Daryl, we've come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to having you on a future episode of Conversations with AARP.
All right. Thank you, Troy, very much. Thank you, everybody, for opportunity. Please be prepared, stay informed, and be safe.
Thank you. Good day.